It's not a problem until it is. We've all heard that before, right? And it's not just in the context of sports. It applies to life as well. It's this idea that you can keep getting away with shit, getting away with it until you can't. Building good habits starts today. Look, I love Mondays because I get to come up on here and talk shit about your favorite sports team. But before we get into all of that and I start getting into my rants about any of that, I wanted to introduce a new segment that I'm going to do every Monday, if I remember it. The best thing I saw this weekend. And the best thing I saw this weekend, roll the tape, Saquon Barkley hurdling a man going backwards. Okay, he didn't even see the dude. It was so incredible. When you have grown men, not just any grown men, athletes, or 1% of athletes in the world saying, yo, we have never seen anything like that before, that's when you know it was impressive as hell. It's going to live down, it'll go in the history books as one of the greatest plays to ever be made on a football field. I know that's a crazy statement, but that's how incredible it was. And you saw it right there. Collectively, everybody's jaw dropped, okay? And that's how I felt about it. That was the best thing I saw this weekend. Now, let's get into the recap of Week 9 in the NFL, okay? Let's start with the team that's been on everybody's mind. And I haven't even really talked about them that much on this show. But today is the day where let's just set a time, okay? Let's just set a segment just for the Dallas Cowboys, okay? Because there's a lot to be said about the Dallas Cowboys. And I know that you're going to say, yo, why are you talking about a team that isn't that good? But you know what? Here's the thing, okay? Let's start. The Dallas Cowboys are never irrelevant, okay? Because they are America's team, okay? And I didn't start this show, right, talking that much about them, but I did. If you remember the first episode, I said I did talk about Dak, I did talk about Big Mike, and I did talk about Jerry briefly, but I didn't talk about the Dallas Cowboys yet. Okay, and this just seems like the time to do so. Okay, so let's just set a time that we just talk about the Dallas Cowboys for the next, however long this takes. Okay, so coming into the year, we thought the Dallas Cowboys were going to be an average team, and we were so wrong because they are so below average that it's not even funny. And I'm not going to be the next Dallas Cowboys hater because, look, I want the NFL, as an NFL fan, I want the league to grow. And I know when the Dallas Cowboys are doing good, we as a league will do better. So I'm not going to say that I'm happy that they're not doing good and this, that. Nah, man, I ain't going to even go there. What I will say is this. Look, we thought that team, the Dallas Cowboys, were going to be an average football team coming into 2024. They have blown our expectations out of the water because they play bad football on all three levels, right? They're not good on offense, they're not good on defense, they're not good on teams. Well, let's take it a step further. They're not good at coaching and they're not good at ownership. Okay, and I'm not saying that like the ownership is bad. I'm just saying that, sometimes what Jerry Jones says does creep into the locker room. I assume it does, right? I don't know, but I'm assuming that some of the comments he makes does come into the locker room, whether it's the coaching staff or the players. So that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that he's a bad owner in any way. Okay, he's incredibly wealthy, and I feel like, to be the, it's not easy being the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, right? So I'm not gonna say that he's a bad owner. I'm just saying the ownership things that they have done right now isn't great. Okay, but forget all that. Okay, let's just talk about the play on the field. Okay, let's just talk about that, right? And this team, man, you go on the road to Atlanta, and this is a week where you are 3-point dogs on the road to Atlanta, which I thought was actually really disrespectful to Atlanta. I know a lot of people didn't think so. Okay, a lot of people, and I know, right, a lot of gamblers were on the Dallas Cowboys this week because they thought that they were going to make make this game either close to cover or actually win the game. Look, I am blown away by how bad this offense looks week in and week out. Okay, and it's not just about the quarterback play, because we can talk in great depth about the quarterback play in Dallas, and I've said this for years. Dak Prescott is just mid. This idea last year, these talking heads, man, these talking heads on ESPN, and this is my problem with ESPN, okay? And the reason why I'm making this podcast is because I love some of the people on ESPN, but you never know if they are doing it for clicks or not. You never know if what they're saying they actually believe in or not. You never know if you should be taking this person's opinion serious or not. You never know. So on this show, I'm going to tell y'all right now, there's none of that, man. I'm going to be very honest. And when I say we, I mean we as the fans. Okay, I'm not talking from the perspective of a single team, right? When I do, it'll be about the Raiders. Okay, we'll get into them. But I'm talking like this is going to be a sincere, right? I'm not trying to get views by talking anything controversial. Nah, man, this is going to be very honest. And when I say we, I mean we as the fan, because, look, I have a pulse on what the national, fan base feels like. What we are actually seeing, not like a single team, not that. Okay, obviously I'm fairly plugged into the Raiders. I follow them really closely. We have some links in Vegas as well, so I'm fairly plugged in there. But when it comes to the NFL in general, I'm saying this, man. I'm speaking as a fan of the league. Okay. And a fan of the league, we said that the Dallas Cowboys were not going to be good enough to make the playoffs. But did we think that they were going to be a bottom 5 team? No, seriously. And we're not going to make excuses with the injuries, okay? Everybody, yes, they've had injuries. They've had injuries to their key guys. But let's not act like they were playing great with them. Right, let's not act like Michael Parsons was having Defensive Player of the Year type of year. Let's not act like that. Let's not act like Deron Bland and Trayvon Diggs were having, elite years. Let's not act like that. Let's not act like, the story coming out that Dak Prescott's injury that happened yesterday on Sunday against Atlanta, right, is now considered to be more severe, and he'll miss the next 3-4 weeks. I think it was the initial report. Let's not act like Dak has played great. Okay, nah, man, we're not gonna do that. Look, and they can go up on ESPN and every other network and talk about, they haven't helped Dak. Give me a break, man. Give me a damn break. What have they not helped him with? All right, let's eliminate most of this year. Okay, because again, let's go back. We thought they were not going to be good. We knew coming into the year that this is not a playoff team. So that part of it is not a surprise. Did we think that they were a bottom 5 team? No. I don't think that anybody really thought that. We didn't think that they were going to be a playoff team. Right? But let's take this year out of it. What have they not done to support Dak? They have given him weapons. They've given him an offensive line. They have given him running game, and they've given him coaching. Okay. It has consistently come up short. Okay. That's number one. Number two, right, you paid him, right, which also took too long. And then you paid his wide receiver, which also took too long. And those are your 2 best players on offense, right? Your quarterback and your number 1 wide receiver. And you paid them in the last week of preseason, so the week before opening day, and you expected everything to be good. That to me is absurd, but it is what it is. Okay, I understand that that's the way that they wanted to go down. So I'm not questioning it. I'm saying that if that's the way you wanted to do it, fair, but then don't be surprised by the results. Right, don't be surprised that they come off a little slow. Don't be surprised that offense doesn't click. And the other thing is that we knew when they lost Tony Pollard, who, wasn't great last year in Dallas anyways. But we knew that, over the last year or two that they were going to struggle running the ball. Okay. And that's exactly what's happened. Let's not act like that is also a surprise. Let's not act like Dak missing throws, turning the ball over at the rate that he is a surprise. Let's not act like that, man. Let's not act like that is a surprise either. We will say the surprise is that I get that Dan Quinn got a job in Washington. We'll get to them. Okay. So we get that you're, getting a new defensive coordinator, but you hired Mike Zimmer thinking that, this defense was going to be really good with his, pedigree on the defensive side of the ball. Now, that defense is bad. That defense is bad. And you know what? That defense is bad at all three phases, right? It's bad at the line, it's bad in the middle, and it's bad at the back end. Right? And to me, that I think is a surprise. I get that, everybody's going to point to but they've been hurt, they've been this and that. Look, I get that you're hurt, right? And you're missing games. But when you have a defensive philosophy, it becomes a plug and play system. Obviously, you're not going to replace Michael Parsons, right? But let's not act like he was doing great when they were in. Let's not act like they weren't giving up like 200 rushing yards when he was in the game. And remember, if you remember, what do we say about the past 2 years in the Dallas Cowboys? That their linebackers are too small. And when you go up against good running teams, you will get gashed, right? It happened in the playoffs twice, and it happened early this year. It's happened all this year now, right? Now, you can point to it because even with Micah Parsons in the game, like, they weren't good. Obviously, missing Lawrence on the other side, Durant Bland, and Trayvon Diggs. Like, yeah, they're banged up. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you're telling me that they have zero depth, that none of the guys can play well. Like, is that what we're saying? Right? Because I'll give you an example. Aiden Hutchinson had a terrible injury. And I came on this show and I said, look, I don't think that they need to necessarily replace him because A, he's irreplaceable, and B, if you have a good defensive philosophy, you'll be okay. You'll be okay, man. You'll be okay on the defensive side of the football. And if you look at everything that they've done since that Dallas game in Jerry World, the Detroit Lions have still been really good on defense. So it's not, I get that they're hurt, but we've seen it in the NFL many a times that even when you get hurt, your defense is still able to play well because you have a defensive philosophy and culture in place that allows every player to step in and still play well. The Pittsburgh Steelers, for example, right? They still play well even if they're missing key guys, because they have an identity on that side of the ball. And that's what Dallas thought they were going to get with the Mike Zimmer-led defense. And they just haven't. And that, to me, is a surprise. The surprise isn't on the offensive side because we knew they weren't going to be that good. Right? We knew that. And I'm not saying that the defensive side of the ball it hasn't helped that they've been injured, but like, come on, man. For how long are we going to use the excuse that the Dallas Cowboys are just in a string of bad luck? Because we've heard that excuse before. Look, it comes down to this, right? They're not coached well. And on this show, I've said this before. I like talking about coaching because I think it really does matter. It matters to an extent that the average or casual fan of any sport will never understand. But if you are a true fan of the NFL, you understand how much coaching actually matters. Okay, and Mike McCarthy has been average for a long time. He's just been average. I don't love how he addresses the media either. And that has to be one of the things that you look at when you're hiring a coach, is that how do they address the media? Look, Bob Saleh, didn't get fired just because of just because of how they played. He got fired because some of the media stuff wasn't good enough, right? You can't say Hassan Reddick is this, but he's not that. You can't say that Aaron Rodgers has an inexcused absence. You can't say shit like that. You're not in the New York market. You have to be, media trained well enough to handle all that. And I know what you're thinking. Yo, that's not really part of the coach's job, but it is. It is in the National Football League. It is in every league that you play at the highest level, man, because you understand that the media is part of your job. It's in your contract. You have to be good with the media, especially when you take high leverage jobs. I'll give you one more example. Darvin Ham in Los Angeles. Look, that team wasn't great by any means. They were a pretty good defense. They were a fairly good team for what they had in terms of talent, right? The talent on the team wasn't good, but they were a fairly good team for what he was able to get out of them. But the reason why he's not the head coach anymore is not because he couldn't coach or he was a bad coach. It was just that he couldn't handle the media, right? Every time he would go up onto the press box, it was like this guy had no idea what he was talking about. And in the LA market, you cannot do that. You cannot do that. I'll give you one more example, and then we're gonna move on from that. Okay. The Toronto Maple Leafs had a head coach, Sheldon Keefe, I think, right? Exact same situation. It's not that he can't coach. It's not that he's a bad coach, but in the Toronto market in hockey, okay, every time he got up onto the booth, this guy had no idea what he was talking about. And look, the fans are not dumb. Toronto Maple Leafs fans are not dumb. Los Angeles Lakers fans are not dumb. The New York Jets fan base is not dumb. They understand what they're seeing. And when you go up on the booth and as a coach, you don't have a clear message of what you're going to say when you get hit by any question, then, you're not going to survive that long. Not because, and also obviously because you're not going to win, but like that just all adds on to it. The leash keeps getting shorter and shorter for a lot of these head coaches. And speaking of which, Dennis Allen is out in New Orleans. Is that a surprise? Because it ain't to me. I didn't think he was. I didn't think that he should have been a coach 2 years ago. What has he shown? New Orleans fans, man, tell me, man, like, what has he shown in 2 years that they kept him around for that long? And I'm not here calling for anybody's job. My thing is this with coaching. Because it matters so much, you cannot tell me that we can hold every other aspect of the sport accountable except coaching. Like, we have to be honest with how the coaching is because it matters so much to the success of your team. And we start by saying, look, as fans, our happiness is dictated upon how my team does well, how well my team does. So, yes, I'm going to hold a lot of these coaches accountable for it, and I want to be in that position. So I get it that this might be a fraternity for me, 20 years down the line, but I'm saying, like, right now, look, I'm going to hold them accountable because I feel like coaching in the NFL has gradually gotten worse. Every year it feels like. It feels like people don't learn from their lessons. It feels like they're not watching the tape of every other team like we are. And I assume that they're not because they have so much going on. And I get that as well, right? I'm not saying that it's an easy job, but look, there's 32 of these jobs in the world, and there are probably, hundreds of people that would like to be in that position. So look, Dennis Allen, man, at no point did I think that he was ever a good coach. And I don't even know what he did well at any point in his time with the Saints. Their defense wasn't great under him, even though the players were pretty good. Right? Offense cannot figure it out. And they lose to the Carolina Panthers. Like, divisional game. Yeah. Like, they didn't play well, and I get it. That's why obviously he gets fired the day after a tough game. They're 2-7. They're probably out of it, but like, just like systemically, they were so bad at so many things. And my thing is this, man. I don't love this firing people mid-season unless you think that there's a dramatic change going to happen. My thing is this: when you see bad coaching happening, that doesn't like get better like gradually through the years. Because Dennis Allen isn't somebody that was not in New Orleans for a while. Like, he's been there a long time. So you knew exactly who he was. And it just went on for too long. And I just felt like when you have that, like, to me, you have to make the changes in the off season, right? Because now it is unfair for whoever steps in and then be critiqued in the same way, right? It's unfair to them to go the next like 8 games, and could get critiqued in the same way as a head coach would. And then now their opportunities to be a head coach, if not in the team that you become an intern at, but somewhere else, are also limited because interim tags don't work out well, right? That's just a hit. Like, it's not a surprise, but interim tags don't work out well because you go from being a friend as a coach, as an interim coach, to now a full-time coach. Like, that never works out well for anybody. Sorry, that's not a surprise. It hasn't worked well out for them either. We'll get into that later because that's a whole other scene. But look, Mike McCarthy was never that good. And if they were going to make the change, I would expect them to do it in the offseason. But that's why they didn't sign him to a contract extension. So I would think that they're going to make that change in the offseason. But where do they really go from here? So let's say Dak is going to miss the next 4 weeks. Right? That's what's going to happen. Dak is going to miss the next 3-4 games, let's say. Let's just say he misses the next 3-4 games. And Cooper Rush or I would like to see Trey Lance get an opportunity, but I'm not really sure what the situation he has going on, whether he's hurt or injured or, he's just not good enough to be a backup. I'm not sure exactly what the situation there is. He might be hurt. But I would like to see Trey get an opportunity as well. I would like to see just some level of like fight. They're so checked out. Every part of their team is, I feel like, just checked out. When you look at your star player having a podcast, right, and Michael Parsons, and talking about, ranking the top 10 quarterbacks, and they don't mention their own quarterback in Dak, which they shouldn't because he's not that, so they didn't lie. But they also should probably add some caveats like, obviously we're going to take our guy before anybody else, but if we didn't, obviously, when it is a podcast, you do get comfortable. And when you get comfortable, you say things. To me, when you play for the Dallas Cowboys, though, it's a little bit more, magnified. So you do sometimes have to watch more of what you do and say than any other team or player on any other team as well. But I didn't love how the media made it a bigger thing than it actually was. I think they're fine. I think that the season's kind of a wash for them anyways. And they probably get a top, maybe a top 5 pick. So we'll see where they kind of go from there. Do they address their offensive line? Do they get skill positions? What do they do to help build that? But I expect them to have a huge culture change in the offseason. I do, man. I don't think Mike McCarthy comes back. And I don't think that that Mike Zimmer comes back either. So I do think that they're going to have a huge culture change. And then, what they do in the draft going forward, how they address it. Because, look, they can't really address the quarterback situation anymore. Because as much as we can say Dak is mid, right? They paid him already. They paid him a lot. So let's say, they wanted to move on or which I'm not saying that they do, but I'm saying, let's say, how do they go about doing that? Because you would have to get a quarterback that is better than Dak, but in the 5th or 6th round, or the 6th or 7th round. That's kind of what we're looking at, because that's the only way that you would win right now, right? So I'm not gonna say that. I'm saying that they have to win with Dak, which they'll never do. But if they have to win with Dak, right? How do they help him in that offense? Is it running backs? Is it the offensive line first, right? Because like I said on this show, and if you know football, you have to understand that you have to be built in the trench. You have to be good on both sides of the line, right? So if you're gonna help Dak, let's build a line and then go forward. Right, whatever that is, because his offensive line used to be Hall of Famer, right? That's not really the case anymore. I'm not saying that they were going to win when that was the case, because if you give any quarterback that's slightly better than Dak, they probably have a Super Bowl right now because of the team that was around him. I'm just saying, if you go back and look, the team that was around him, the level of talent around him would have won. Especially when you had, for years, you had four wins guaranteed pretty much. 2 against the Commies and 2 against the Giants. You had guaranteed wins. Now, that will not be the case, right? So, I don't know what they're going to do going forward. I hope that they kind of figure it out, because I think the Dallas Cowboys being good is better for football as in general. Is better for the NFL. So I hope they figure it out. I don't know if they will, but with Dak, here's my thing with the quarterback position. Let's get into this. Right. I think every team, if you don't have a Pat Mahomes, a Josh Allen, a Joe Burrow, or a young star like a CJ Stroud, like a Jordan Love, right? If you don't have bona fide quarterbacks, in the NFL, I think you should draft a quarterback every 3 years, every 2 to 3 years. Every 2 to 3 years, you should be drafting a quarterback. And I'm not saying in the first round, second round, anytime. At any time, you should just be drafting quarterbacks in the second or third round. At any time in the draft, you should be drafting quarterbacks. Because I think that if you don't have a bona fide guy, you should be looking to always improve in that position. And what's the harm in it? What's the harm in always having somebody that's in your system but ready to, could step in and play? There's no harm in it. There's no harm in drafting a quarterback and I know what you're thinking, that, Muneeb, if I draft a quarterback every couple of years, I'm missing out on people that I might have hit on but it's still a gamble, so who cares? Right? If I take a quarterback in the third round, let's say every 2-3 years, right? And I don't have a bona fide guy. Let's say I take a quarterback every 2 to 3 years for 5 years. Okay, well, maybe I missed out on a couple guys, but who's to say that I was going to take them anyways and they were going to be stars on my team? Nobody. You cannot evaluate that. Right? So I'm not saying you take a quarterback in the first round. Right? But I'm saying that every couple years, even if you have paid your quarterback. So if you are a team like the Jags, like the Dallas Cowboys, some of these other teams, like Tua in Miami, right? The Jets. If you're some of these teams, let's just experiment. Because the quarterback position is like the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. So they hold so much to the success of your franchise. And why would you not want to constantly have that figured out? And I'm not saying that it ever will be. I'm saying that I don't understand why more teams don't do that. Unless you have a bona fide quarterback, it's just not worth for you to, not constantly be thinking about that position. And we see it every year, is that teams think that they, are better than they actually are because they think that they've hired the right way. They've, their scheme is good enough. And the quarterback, if he just plays and doesn't, make turnover, he doesn't give the ball away, that they're going to win a lot of games. Well, that's not the case. It's just not the case. Like, it's not just about not turning the ball over. It's about winning in, every capacity or every aspect of football, right? That you have to win at now to win games. And it's not just about the quarterback can just not turn the ball over. Nah, man, they've got to push the ball down the field. They've got to be able to read and disguise every, defense. And they've got to involve every player. They've got, there's so much that they have to do for you to win. It's not just about, if we just do a dunk and dive and this and that and we can consistently win because our defense, let's say, is so good. Like the Pittsburgh Steelers couldn't do that and win. Because my thing is this, is the ultimate goal in sports in general not getting the championship? Is that not the only goal? Is the goal to win, to just get to the playoffs? I don't understand that. And this is where I go with that. Are the Indianapolis Colts going to go to the playoffs? I don't think so. Some people might, but I don't think so. They're not going to go to the Super Bowl. Right? So are they a playoff team? Maybe. Right? But and I get it, the AFC South is kind of up for grabs because I think that it's slipping away from the Houston Texans because they've, what do we say at the start of this episode, man? It's not a problem until it is. And this is our first edition of it, okay? It's not a problem until it is. Let's get into that. It's not a problem that your offensive line can't block you because you have a stud young quarterback that not only can stay in the pocket, take hits, but he can get his stud wide receivers involved. Now what happens when your wide receivers start, get hurt and your problem still exists that you can't protect them and you go up against good teams? Well, you're not going to win. That's what's going to happen. You're not going to win, and it's going to slowly start slipping away from you. So all these expectations we had coming into the year for the Houston Texans, they could all be over. They're on the verge of missing the playoffs. The Houston Texans are on the verge of missing the playoffs. I'm going to say that again. Because, look, they are figuring out that, it is, we can't protect CJ Stroud. And it's not that this is their starting line, by the way. It's not that they've been hurt. This is their starting line, and we thought this was going to be a lot better. Their left tackle, Laramie Tunsil, just hasn't played well. He got paid a lot of money, by the way, and he should have because he's a great left tackle. But man, that line has not played well at all. And I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm the offensive line guru and I'm going to suggest changes. No, because I don't know what the change is. And I don't think that we as fans can just say what that's not how the offensive line works, right? The offensive line is like, if it's not a scheme fit, it's not it might be the chemistry of it or whatever, right? Like something's got to change. I don't know if it's personnel wise or scheme wise or whatever. But something's got to change if they want to have any chance of making not only the playoffs, but being relevant going down to the next, 8 weeks in the regular season. So it's not a problem until it is. Right? The Baltimore Ravens, it's not a problem until it is that your defensive secondary just isn't that good. Right? It's not a problem until it is. You can blow out teams and put up 40-some points, right? But when your pass defense isn't good, it's going to come back to haunt you. And this is why I don't think that us as fans can take the Baltimore Ravens seriously yet. Because It's not a problem until it is, man. And like this is a huge problem. You struggle to get pressure to the quarterback, right? Which they is okay because like they play pass rush as a committee. So you don't know who's going to have a good game, right? Matabike, Kyle Van Noy, who's going to have a good game, you don't know, right? But their secondary hasn't played well either. So not only can you not get pressure to the quarterback, but you're also struggling on the back end. Okay, so yeah, you can put up 40 points a game, but what about the games that you can't? What about the games that are going to come down to, 15 to 20 point games? What about those games? You're not going to win many of those. So it's not a problem until it is. Right? The Philadelphia Eagles, you get away with a lot of it. I like the Eagles. I said it this at the start of the year. I said this, that the Philadelphia Eagles have to be in contention for the Super Bowl. They are good enough. They are 100% good enough. And to all the people that think that they have exceeded any expectations, they have not. Ask any Philly fan. Ask any Philly fan what that team should be. That team should be in the Super Bowl. That's how they feel, because that is absolutely what that team should be. Okay? But they get away with a lot, right? A lot of coaching decisions, a lot of mismanagement when situational football. We talk about that a lot on this show. Situational football and how you're going to handle it. They get away with a lot, right? If Trevor doesn't throw that pick, they lose the game, right? The Philadelphia Eagles lose that game. So they get away with a lot. And yes, I think they have found a recipe to win. It's not just AJ. It's not just Devontae. It's not just Jalen being Superman. Now that you've added Saquon Barkley, let's give the ball to him, more than 20 times a game, more than 18 times a game. Let's be in the 18 to 24 carries a game, and we're going to have a chance to win the game every time we take the football field. Right? And I think they figured it out. I think that they have found some level of identity on the offensive side, which, in the start of the year, you could have said that was kind of lacking. I definitely thought that they were going to figure it out. I think that they have the talent, and I think Jalen is really good. He's good enough to win the Super Bowl. I truly believe that. And I think if you're a Philly fan, you believe that, right? Like, we're not seeing it differently. Like, the expectations are the expectations, and the expectation for the Philadelphia Eagles is to win this year. It's not that they're building for anything. Everybody's paid, right? So I think that they're pretty good. My thing is that, like, their defense has played better than I think a lot of people are giving them credit for. That defensive secondary is not great, but they have played better than a lot of people are giving them credit for. And I think because of that, there's a level of trust that's beginning to develop when you say, Philly can't beat this team or that team, and we'll see what the litmus test is. Nah, man, they're good enough to win. They're good enough to win this year. And but it's not a problem until it is. And those coaching decisions and situational football, it's going to come back to haunt you. It is, man. It just is. And it's not a problem until you make it. And you keep getting away with it. And at one time you won't. And it's going to be at the worst time of the year. And Philadelphia is going to be, lighting cars on fire because they want Nick Sirianni out. And you know what? Like, we couldn't even blame them because we saw it coming from a mile away. And I hope that's not the case. I don't want, like, Philly fans to be attacking me. What I'm saying is we understand that your team is good enough that you don't have to throw games away anymore because you got a bona fide stud running the football. Right? Like, that's what you kind of wanted for the last year. Because when you had that, you went to the Super Bowl with virtually the same team. If not, your team has actually gotten better in a lot of aspects. It's obviously gone worse in some others, but I'm saying it's not like, they haven't added pieces. So I think that, yeah, you keep getting away with it. You keep getting away with it. Like, let's hope that it doesn't come to bite you in the worst of moments, because that would be really tough for this team. And I don't know how they would recover, because I know for a fact that if they get bounced early, if they don't make, at least the NFC Championship game, there is no way Nick Sirianni comes back as the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. There is absolutely no way. And I'm not saying that that's the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. My thing is that Philly fans will not have him back, because they've been calling for his job when they are winning games, because they see the writing on the wall that, this might not be the way to win. Right? They're seeing that too. So, look, again, you get, it's not a problem until it is, man. So, I hope they keep winning. Now let's move on to America's game of the week. Packers, Lions, and the Packers come up short. They lose to the Lions on the road in Lambeau Field, which the weather was insane. It was pouring rain all game, and there was 40-mile-an-hour winds. So it was very, very much like Green Bay in November type of weather. And I'm gonna tell y'all, man, what did we say last episode? That this is a litmus test for both teams, but more for the Lions than it is for the Packers. And why do I say that? And I say that because the Lions haven't played outside all year until yesterday. So that was their first game, divisional game, outside. So we didn't know what Jared Goff was gonna look like, and I know what you're thinking. Well, the Lions are 7-1, and they were going into that game 6-1. So let's not act like if they lost that game, it was the end of the world, and we were going to make them out that they weren't going to win the NFC North or whatever the case may be. No, we're not saying that. We're saying that was the litmus test, because we're old enough to remember where Jared Goff really is. And he's, but if they keep winning games, you can host every playoff game in Detroit, and then, you make your way to New Orleans, where it is also indoors. So if you are a team like that knows that is the way for your success to happen, then yeah, the Detroit Lions, you have to have a game. You have to host every playoff game. That's just how, and they can certainly do so, because that team is an absolute wagon. Look, they are good on both sides of the football. They are great on their offensive line is just so incredible. And I said this. What is the Achilles heel of Jared Goff? Is that he doesn't like pressure in his face. He's good with, defensive ends coming around, right? Because he'll step up and make plays. But he's not great with pressure coming in his face, through the gap, through the A gap, right? He's not great with that. But the strength of their offensive line is also that, right? So, the Detroit Lions are able to get so much push in the middle that Jared Goff does have a lot of time. And the Packers, what I don't understand is this, and I'm not gonna talk too much about this game, because I think a lot of people that are more knowledgeable than me will. And I also want to address some of the things that I heard that were kind of absurd. But look, what from the Packers' perspective, the only thing I will say is this. What I don't understand is that every time you sent pressure, it worked. And by that I mean every time you sent more than 4 people after Jared Goff, it worked. Right? There's a couple times that there was a penalty and this, that, and it caught it. But the other times you did it, it worked, and it was a negative play. It was either a sack or, tipped ball or something. It was an incompletion or something. Right? But you didn't do it enough. And in that type of weather, in the rain and why are we not sending pressure to get the ball out of his hands? I know that the Packers are not a big like heavy blitz team, but like this seems like a game where you would think that they would want to do that, and they just didn't. And again, I'm not going to tell them how to coach defensively because I feel like they've been pretty good, but also I'm not the qualified person to do so. But I'm just saying it does, as a fan, does question. We can question why they would not send the blitz more often. And the only other thing I'll say is that the Packers had some great jerseys, but that helmet and that color, that was not it. It was like that, like ugly mustardy yellow that, I get it. It's like that cheese. Yeah, it's that cheesehead yellow was like not, that yellow was not it. Their jerseys, sweet. But that like helmet, I don't know if it was a shine that was coming off of it because of the rain, but like that helmet, those helmets were ugly. But the Detroit Lions are a wagon, man. They are. And Jared Goff, credit to him. I'm not, I'm still not super sold on him, but he's played really, really well. Him and Lamar are probably MVP candidates right now. They're probably 1 and 2, but Jared has played really, really well, and he's played complementary football that we expect the Detroit Lions to play because they are great on both sides of the football. But I didn't like the narrative that, Jordan's injured. They got a bye week coming up. He shouldn't play this, that. No, man. Nah, man. He should play because that's what you do when you are a football player in the NFL. That's what you do, and yeah, he didn't play great. The interception pick six was tough, but his team also didn't help him that much. I felt like there were some drops that they should probably clean up. But Detroit, the Lions made more plays. You're dealing with the weather, and I get that the weather had an effect on how your receivers played and your running backs played and things like that. But the Lions made the plays that the Packers didn't, and that's why they won the game. I felt like I don't want to overreact to this game, just because I think that the Packers had chances. They had chances to win, and they just didn't. So is it going to be like that every time? Well, the Detroit Lions make it seem like that, but this is my point, is that, let's take away the offense, but let's just talk about how the Detroit Lions defensively, right? We talked about ad nauseum about the impact the Aiden Hutchinson injury will have. And yes, it has had an impact. We're not saying that. But, they still play well because they have a defensive identity under Aaron Glenn. And we've seen that for years now. They have some level of, this thing where it's a plug and play. Everybody understands their role at such a high level that they are able to perform. That's why I've said it on this show that I'm not sure that they need to go out and they must replace Aiden Hutchinson or find somebody instead, because this is their opportunity to win a Super Bowl or whatever. I think that they are good enough to not have to do that. Personally, that's what I think. Because I think they have a defensive identity established. That's honestly the way I see the Detroit Lions. I'm like, they have an identity that's good enough that they don't even need to do all that stuff. Right, and sell picks and this and that. Nah, man, they're good enough. But again, I think the Packers, it is a wash game. Obviously, you're going to watch the film and go through all the critiques, but that pick six kind of sealed the game for you. It was just tough to recover. I feel like your receivers didn't make the right plays. I felt like Jordan, because of his groin injury, wasn't moving as well as he should have. But it's, you still had and despite all that, you still had chances to win. So I'm not going to overreact like a lot of these people ESPN and all these other things saying, oh, he probably should have just, not played. He should have came out the game, let Malik Willis in, this, that. Now, like, I'm not going to go out there. And is this a problem that Jordan, leads the league in interceptions and this and that? And I'm not even going to go there. I think that, they're good. The Packers are a pretty good team. They held Detroit to, 17 points, I felt like. Obviously, the pick six, was the other score. So, the Detroit Lions are a pretty good team, right? So, yeah. But I think the Packers are a pretty good team as well. So, I wouldn't think too much about that. But I think the team that we should be talking about more is the Los Angeles Rams. And that's because, I'm not going to sit up here and say that I love Matt Stafford, because I don't. I just don't. Because he makes amazing plays, and then he makes some decisions that you're like, what? What are you doing, man? And when that happens, you remember that is Matt Stafford. But when he's making incredible plays, they win. Okay? And they have one of the best, coaches in the NFL, in Sean McVay. He's, what, the one thing you'll say about Sean is that he has his team prepared, man. And he always does a great job of calling the game and has a good pulse on what the team needs at that time. And I feel like the Rams, they started off slow, but they're 4-4. They are tied for the division lead. The NFC West, nobody's really running away with it. But let's talk about the flip side. The Seattle Seahawks, like, what are we doing, man? What are we doing? I know that, it wasn't, one-handed catch in overtime to lose the game. But wow, like, the Seattle Seahawks, man, like, I don't know why, but this is just not a good football team. It, like, Geno, there's games where he reverts to Geno of old, okay? And Geno, he, throwing 2 picks in the red zone, another pick, so he threw 3 interceptions. Like, you're not going to win a lot of games when you turn the ball over that much. Ball security is job security. We'll see what the Seahawks are going forward. I just don't love what they have shown so far. I feel like that their team is good enough to win in the NFC. They are good enough to make the playoffs. They're good enough to, when you just look at the roster, they're good enough on both sides. Obviously, I've talked about this idea that, nobody has ever thought that building from your defensive secondary in will ever work in the NFL. I don't think it will, and it still hasn't, but these guys still want to try. Whatever, all the power to them. But if you're Seattle and you're and you're a Seahawks fan and you're watching this team, like, and you're thinking, where did they go from here? Well, I don't know, man. I think they're still figuring that out too. I think they're still figuring that out too, man. And I wouldn't be surprised if they go with Sam Howell. I'm not saying that just because. I think that, Geno's played great in moments, and he's played terrible in moments. And I'm not saying you're going to get better with Sam. I know they're missing DK Metcalf and some of their other players. But yeah, man, that offense is, they just don't like running the ball. And I said that a couple weeks ago, is that, like, this is an offense that doesn't make sense. You have 2 stud running backs. You lead the league in passes thrown with a quarterback that, yes, he can throw the football, but, like, not a stat that you want to lead in the NFL is throw the football, because you can't control the time of play. And you lead the league in throwing the football, and sometimes when that happens, you're not getting production out of your running back room. But that's not the case either. You have 2 stud running backs, and you just don't like running the football. And that, again, we don't know why that is. Even when they have the lead, even when they don't, like, it's weird. But that That's who they are right now. That's kind of their identity that they have. Um, I'm not sure if it gets solved. I'm not sure where they go from here, but hopefully they can kind of figure it out because I want to see the Seahawks do well because I think that they have enough, they have the talent that to do it. So, especially in the NFC West. But if you're going to just the Colts though, and the Vikings on Sunday Night Football, right? If we just talk about the Colts for a second, right? Shane Steichen and what they've been able to do with Anthony Richardson and everything like that. Look, I was on here and I said like I've never seen a quarterback tap out of a game. Obviously, his coach didn't like that either. Okay, his coach didn't like that he tapped out of the game either. But if you go with Joe Flacco and you announce that, is that because you think that you're going to win the Super Bowl, or is that because you think that if you don't show some level of improvement to your team that you're not going to have a job next year? Right? So, and I'm not saying that that is how you should coach because I think that sometimes it is how you should coach, right? Like, for instance, like there's this idea. There's this idea that's been floating around and it's found its way into my algorithm that says that people are saying that the NFL has a quarterback development problem. It has a problem with developing quarterbacks. That is BS. Okay, I don't think that is true at all. What I think is the problem is that people think that every quarterback is going to be good. Every first round pick that's a quarterback or whatever, when they are given the chance that they are going to be good, which just isn't the case. It just doesn't happen in any sport, right? Like, yeah, we could say that they need the time, this, that, but like, so what? Like, we need to win though. What about that? What about and my thing is this. We can talk about giving people time, and everybody uses these examples that, this quarterback went to this place and this place and this place, and now they're having success. Which one of them has won a Super Bowl? I don't remember Baker Mayfield winning the Super Bowl. I don't remember Jared Goff winning the Super Bowl. I don't remember Sam Darnold winning the Super Bowl. Which one of them have won a Super Bowl? So, to all the people thinking like, those teams probably want them back. No, they don't, dude. No, they don't. Because the only way they want you back is if you win the Super Bowl. Because that's the only thing that actually flipping matters. It's the only thing that matters in the NFL. It doesn't matter how many playoff games you lose. It doesn't matter how good you look in the regular season and Jared Goff is, having perfect passer rating after perfect passer rating. And he has more touchdowns than incompletions or something absurd like that. It don't matter. Because let's see you go win the big one. Like, so this idea that, the NFL has a quarterback development problem. Nah, man. What it has is, this idea that we need to win now. Right? And when you... So the expectations are getting, like, the timeline for expectations to be reached are smaller and smaller. And that is fine. That is how the NFL has continued to grow, is because we've seen that if you do 2-3 things correctly, that you always have a chance. You always have a chance, man. So I don't think it has if you're coaching, for example, right, and you go 10-9 your first year and you make the playoffs, right, but it's with your backup quarterback, and now your full-time quarterback comes back the next year and you don't do well, and you bench him. Well, because I need to show my owner that I am trying to do everything I can to win. I need to show my fan base that I'm trying to do everything I can. And the other thing is, I need to show my locker room that I'm doing everything I can to win. Okay? Because that is ultimately the only thing that we are here to do. And that's why I don't understand with these people thinking like, oh, the NFL has, a developmental problem with quarterbacks. Like, no, dude. No, some players just aren't that good. And if I give up on them in the first 2 years and they go somewhere else and have success, all the power to them. But I will not want them back until they win a Super Bowl with the new place. Right? Or show us that they can do that. Because ultimately, that's the only thing that we are thriving for. And if you look at the recency bias of it all, right? If you look at what the Texans have done in 1 year, they hired well in DeMeco Ryan. They get CJ. They trade up to get Will Anderson at 3. Okay. They hire the staff really well. DeMeco bringing in Bobby Slowick, right? And in 1 year, they have completely changed the culture of their team. Okay. The Washington Commanders. A year ago today, we had no idea what their future was going to look like. Today, they have completely turned down their organization. So, my thing is that, you can't get caught up in this player or this team benching this one player because that happens. It's not that the NFL has a developing problem. It's that some of these players just aren't that good. And if I find out in my first 2 years as a coach that they aren't that good, yes, I'm going to bench them. Because I'm going to show my locker room that I will do anything it takes to win. So, no, I completely disagree with this idea that it has a problem, man. I am coaching for my job as well. As a coach, I'm coaching for my job as well, dude. I have to go win and show my owner that I'm doing everything to win. And if I'm not winning, there's a gradual process that's happening. Right? If I go 10-9 here, right, I can't go, 6-10 the next year when I've paid everybody else on my team. If you're the Indianapolis Colts, right, I can't go 10-7 with Gardner Minshew, and when my quarterback comes back the next year, I go like 6-11. I can't have that because my owner and my fan base, my players are gonna look at me and be like, "Yo, what are we doing? How is it that I got paid this offseason and somehow we're going backwards? I chose to stay in Indianapolis because I thought we were on the verge of winning." Right? So as a coach, you're also coaching for everybody else as well and showing everybody that, we are serious about winning. And that's why if you're the Colts, there's two things, right? If you look at it from that perspective, fair. I think that if you look at it from the perspective that, A, we can host a playoff game this year with Joe Flacco. Okay. And B, that I had to show my locker room that we were going to do everything it takes to win this year and not punt on the year just because we're 4-4 or 4-5. Right? But if you look at it from the other perspective that we have heard in the media is that, one, you're not going to win the Super Bowl this year. And two, this idea that you're going to develop a quarterback, having them sit behind Joe Flacco, isn't it better that, you just ride this wave and because he's shown us enough flashes of being, good in the NFL as a quarterback that you would ride this wave out? Because he just hasn't played enough and there needs to be a level of experience that's actually being developed playing in actual football games instead of just watching. What about that element of it? So I think you could go both ways in that because they're not going to be a Super Bowl winning team this year. And if that's the only thing that actually matters in the NFL, which it is, then what are we doing? We're playing to host a playoff game? And if that doesn't happen, then what? Then you have essentially, made AR just wait on the bench. And like, what if it doesn't work for him? That like he didn't actually learn enough from sitting behind Joe Flacco. But so I don't understand how. I mean, I understand it, but my thing is you can look at it from both perspectives and then make an opinion on if it's right or wrong. I'm not gonna say which one I think it is because I actually don't know yet. And I mean, it is what it is. I don't think that they're a Super Bowl winning team anyway, so we'll see if they can even host a playoff game. But if you're the coach, I think you had to make the decision because you are coaching for your job as well, right? So it is what it is. Now let's move past the NFL. And if that's what you're tuning in for, then this next part is gonna be pretty good for you as well because we're gonna talk some F1. Now, I know that a lot of people don't understand Formula One because they're, everybody, the same person wins. So it's like, dude, this is such a dumb sport. The reason why, and I actually, to some extent, actually do agree with you. But the reason why I love Formula One, and I have for a while, is because I love cars and the racing aspect. I love the machinery. I love all of that. And I like how precise you have to be to win. And this past weekend was the Brazil Grand Prix, Sao Paulo Grand Prix, and it was incredible. If there was one F1 race that you would want to watch, just go watch the highlights of that from qualifying to the actual race because there was so much that happened. And we always talk about in racing, there's a saying that that rain is the ultimate equalizer. And that does apply to a lot of other sports that are played outside as well, right? Because the weather can change so much of what, is happening, especially when you're driving at, 300 clicks an hour. The rain can definitely impact what's happening. So there's this notion about Max. And I'm talking to just my purist about Formula One right now. I love Max. I love Max. And the reason why I love Max is because Max has this arrogance about him that a lot of people got turned off to, earlier in his reign of being a champion. Now, look, he's a 3-time world champion. He's won 3 in a row. He's looking to get his 4th. And I love Max because the arrogance that he has, he actually races with that level of arrogance, right? And when you are that talented at what you do as a professional athlete and there's 20 of them in the world, you have the right to be that level of arrogant, okay? Like, what I don't love about a lot of these European, base sports is that they don't have enough of that, environment where talking shit is promoted, right? Like everybody wants to be friends. Nah, man, that's not how competitive environment should be. And Max kind of changed that because Max came in and when he had his first battles to win the championship, there was that level of arrogance that some people got turned off to. And I think that a lot of people have now drawn to Max's arrogance because they're like, yo, this guy, what he does so well is he doesn't, pamper to the media. He doesn't, say all the right things. He says what is on his mind. He says, everything he wishes he wishes was done is what's getting done. It's not about what the team says he should say. Nah, none of that. This guy is so incredible at what he does, and I love Max, man. And what he did this past weekend, starting from P16 to go all the way up to P1, and essentially secure his championship. Like, that was a huge race in the context of the championship, man. And he goes all the way from P16 to number 1 and wins that race. And in incredible fashion, too. The way he raced that game, I think that might have been the best Max we've ever seen in a Grand Prix weekend. He was, he struggled in qualifying, he, struggled in the sprint, this, that, and everything that happened in between. But when it came down to the race itself, this guy was absolutely incredible. And I could not be, more happy for him and everything he had to go through this weekend, and, the narrative around him, and that he's not a fair racer and this, that, and the other. Like, come on, give me a damn break, man. And, for the people that are new to F1 thinking, why is Max actually getting the level of hate that he does, is because, the F1 community and the hub of it is kind of based in the UK, and they want their British drivers to win, right? And when you have Lando Norris, that is your direct competitor, when Max, races the way he does, and they feel like their driver is getting cheated, they make that a narrative. And that's how, it all got started. And Max knows that as well, right? He knows that as well. And if you're Lando, I've said this for a while, you have to learn to race against a Max Verstappen, right? Because he is not just aggressive, but he's been there and done that. Like, Charles found that out last year. I'm a great racer, but like, racing for a championship and racing against Max is very hard, because he's the guy. The way he races, the way he goes about his business, like, and people can have their opinion, like, he's too much, he's too aggressive. He makes maneuvers that are dangerous, this, that, and the other. No, dude, he races within the rules of the game. And yeah, did he get a penalty? Sure. But, he got penalized, and that it is what it is. But when you go up against him, there has to be a mental attitude and fortitude that you have to go into the race with, because you're racing against arguably one of the greatest racers in the history of Formula One. Okay, and I'm going to say this right here, right now. I think Max is going to go down as one of the GOATs, if not the GOAT. I think he has a legit chance to be the GOAT, because he doesn't put a flipping foot wrong all weekend, dude. He is so good at that. Like, he can position. He's brilliant, man. He can position his car like nothing, like nobody else. And if you want any context, there's a driver that has the exact same car that can't even get into the top 10. His teammate that drives the exact same car can't even get into the top 10, and this guy leads in the World Championship race, because he's so bloody excellent. He's so good at what he does. That if you're new to F1, go back and watch the highlight of this past weekend in Brazil, because that was one of the best drives that Max has ever done, and it was incredible to see that race. Now let's move on to something that hits home for me. Okay, now if you've stayed this far, thank you. Okay, but this next part you might not want to stay for. Okay, because we're gonna talk some cricket, right? And this one hits home for me. Okay, Pakistan versus Australia. Okay, first ODI happened yesterday, right? And this is a series of 3. Okay, and oh my God, there's so much to be said about this team. And I'm trying to control my emotions, because I put on my clown makeup every time this team plays cricket, because I have to stay up all night to watch my team play cricket and get absolutely destroyed. And then I have to read every, comment on social media about this, that, and the other, and how this impacts every. Nah, okay. Here's what I'm gonna say, and I want everybody to hear me. Every uncle that you think knows cricket, they don't. Every uncle that you talk to about cricket that talks about this, that, and the other, they don't know shit about it. Okay, because they always go back to the same thing. It's always the same thing. Oh, there's too much politics involved, this, that. Forget all that. Let's forget all the politics and everything outside of cricket. Okay, because we understand that it exists because it's always existed in our country and the team itself. Okay, so let's forget that it even is there. So forget the politics. What about the play on the field? What about just that? I'm so sick of this team, man. I'm so sick of this team because it's been 2 years. It's been 2 years since we thought we were relevant. It's been 2 years since we thought that we were going to be, the face of cricket internationally for the next 5 years. It's been 2 years since we thought we had enough of a team to win at the highest level of cricket. And for 2 damn years, we've been disappointed. I'm so sick of this team, man. I'm so sick of this team because, we constantly make changes. We constantly make changes to different things and think that it's going to help, and it doesn't. We constantly go through a regime change. We've gone through coaches. We've gone through captaincies. We've gone through this, that, and the other, thinking that it's going to make a change, and it doesn't. We've done everything under the sun, and it doesn't do anything. And I'm so sick of this team, man. I'm so sick of this idea. We've made Rizwan the captain. We've given the captain to other people, and it's the same damn result. In a 50-over game, you score just over 200? You don't even play 50 overs? I'm so sick of this team, man. I am so sick of this team. I'm so sick of this team for so many reasons, dude. And I don't want nobody in my comments telling me, oh, but you're not addressing that, how much of an impact that politics has on this. Nah, man. How about just play? How about we just play better? How about that? How about that? How about we just play better? Okay? Because you remember 2 years ago, and this is why I keep going back to 2 years. 2 years ago, right, when there was a time where Pakistan cricket team was number one in every aspect of cricket. ODI, T20, and Test. You know why that was? It was because they were A, playing well. They had finally a consistency in regime, okay? And B, we had pace bowling that was good, okay? And I don't care about any politics. You cannot tell me that in 2 years, the same dudes that were considered to be one of the 3-4 best pacers in the world are now not even in people's top 20. Because they simply cannot get it done. They simply cannot be a side that can rely on any aspect of their game. When you think that they have a good batting team, that they don't. When you think that they have a good bowling team, they don't. They disappoint you time and time again. And it's been 2 years since we thought we were relevant again. Before that, we weren't good. But after that, we weren't good. It's been 2 years, man, where we thought that there was a moment where we were going to be a team that was going to win at the highest level. We thought we were going to be a world championship contender. We thought we were going to beat the Aussies in Australia. We thought we were going to beat the English in England. We thought we were going to beat them in Pakistan. Now, we can't do none of that. Because this team has constantly disappointed at every aspect of cricket. They can't field, they can't bowl, they can't bat, they can't do any of that. They can't coach well, right? And you want to talk to me about politics? Nah, man, forget the politics. What about the play on the field? What about that? What about just going out there and performing to the best of your ability? What about that? What about the ability that we've seen you perform at? What about the fact that you've been on the team for 4 years and we can count on our one hand, the amount of times we've seen you perform well. What about that? What about the fact that the reason you're still on the team is because you're connected well? What about that? What about the fact that there is absolutely no accountability for the players? What about the fact that we don't have a single leader on the team? What about that, man? This is a team that when I look at the roster every time, right, I cannot point out to a single person that can lead a team, is a leader of men. And I'm going to tell you something right now. That is the most disappointing thing you could ever say about a team in Pakistan. Because if there's one thing that they always could rely on is that they had a guy in that locker room that could hold people accountable. And we haven't had that in flipping years, man. And this team right now, I'm so sick of this team, man. I'm so sick of this damn team, dog. Because every time we watch them play, you think that there's hope and there's not. Because they're just not good enough. They're not good enough at any aspect of cricket. And cricket is not a sport that you just go out and think that I have this, amount of talent or whatever, and because of how they've played in the past that they're going to win. Nah, man, you have to be consistently good, just like every other sport. And you have to prove it every year. Now, think about it like this, okay? None of these guys on the roster have proved it in the last 4 years, but they're still on the roster. There was a guy on our team. He's still on our team. There's a guy named Babar Azam. He was supposed to be the savior of our team, and I'm gonna go on record and say this. We love Babar. Babar Azam is an incredible player. He is good. He's a good player. But there's a difference between being good and great. And he isn't great because he can't not lead a group of men well enough. He just can't, okay? And over the last couple of years, he has constantly come up short. And every uncle that you'll ever talk to will make every excuse under the sun, okay? I will not do that because I have made every excuse for him over the past 2 years. That ends today. We have to hold our stars accountable. And these guys are not good enough to play at the highest level of cricket. They're just not. And you cannot tell me that there is not enough talent in our country of Pakistan to beat just this team. And on an afternoon stroll, in any city in Pakistan, I can build a team that will wipe the floor with these bums. And that is no exaggeration. Because this team has no leadership. And if you have no leadership, you'll never win at the highest level of cricket or any sport. You cannot be a professional athlete, man. And these guys are not professional in any sense. And I'm calling all of these bums out, man. All of them. Every single one of them is such a disappointment. And I'm so sick of this team, man. And I stay up all night watching them and thinking that, man, this might be a time where we can win and go on a run and maybe it looks better and this, that. No, never. It hasn't happened. It rarely ever happened in my lifetime, but it happened for a short period of time, and the expectations finally grew for the team. Now, you could tell me that, losing to the United States in the World Cup was a disappointment. No, it wasn't. Not to us, it wasn't, because we knew what our team was, and that team wasn't good enough. That team probably should not have won a game. There was a time where we were part of the top 5-6 teams in the country. Or in the world, sorry. You know what we are now? Probably a bottom 5. I'm so sick of this team, man. That's Mondays. I will catch all of y'all tomorrow on another episode of Game On with Muneeb Khan. See you then.